Hello, everyone. I'm Marley,
And I'm Scruffy.
and you probably have noticed that is not Mandy speaking. So, welcome to Season 2 of Hitbox. This season, we're, as usual, splitting up into 2 semesters. And for the first semester, Mandy is actually studying abroad, which is very exciting and very sad for me, but that's okay. We've invited a good friend of ours, Scruffy. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, so hello, I'm Scruffy. I am a video artist and a musician who produces content on YouTube, mainly concerning video game audio and how it's implemented, the theory behind it, and just how good it sounds. And yeah, I was graciously invited to serve as a guest co-host on this show, where we just talk about video games. Isn't that right?
Yep, and why we love them, and just why they're so fantastic.
Yeah.
So let's get started. So our topic for our very first episode of Season 2 is one of my favorite games, and if you remember listening at the end of last season, I had just started playing it, and Mandy had been playing it for a good while, which is Breath of the Wild.
Breath of the Wild.
Legend of Zelda. Do you want to just start by maybe saying your experience with the game?
Sure. So I had the game for quite a while now. I think pretty close to its launch is when I got it.
Woo!
And
Right at the start.
I've put about 250 hours into it. And I've finished pretty much everything there is to do. This presents our interesting dichotomy in
Oh yeah, this
in
is wild.
presenting this podcast. I have finished the game, but I've finished no other Legend of Zelda game.
And
Meanwhile,
I've finished a lot of other Legend of Zelda games, but I'm not done with Breath of the Wild. I don't even know what percentage in I'm in. Like,
but you just got the Master Sword, isn't that right?
I did just get the Master Sword.
Yeah.
Last night I got the Master Sword.
The Master Sword. All right.
Yeah.
So you're pretty well into the game.
Yeah.
You still
Yeah.
have a ways to go.
I've
but-
located each divine beast. I've only beat one because I'm lazy. But you know what? That's okay. I'm taking my time.
But we're gonna try and navigate that
Yeah.
as we talk about the game.
So if Scruffy and I tiptoe around some spoilers, it's because we're trying not to spoil each other, in part.
Right.
But we don't care about our viewers getting spoiled. That's
Yes,
not in our...
please take note
Yeah.
that this will most likely contain spoilers for Breath of the Wild and possibly for other Legend of Zelda games.
Absolutely. So let's get started. So we discussed a little bit beforehand what we wanted to talk about, and something Scruffy brought up that I'm not super familiar with is chemistry engine in Breath of the Wild.
Yes. So in Breath of the Wild, you have a physics engine which commands all of the interactions between objects you can throw, enemies, and larger objects that you can't throw but push around on the terrain.
Absolutely.
And then other elements like water and lava and mud. They all have physics to them, of course, but they also have chemistry between them. They have ways in which they affect different conditions of each other that aren't physical. They're better described as chemical. So, for example, an obvious one is that anything water will put out fire.
Mm-hmm.
But also anything fire will set alight anything dry, like grass
Yeah, that's
or
one of my
trees.
One of my favorite things actually is seeing like you have a fire creature or something shooting fire arrows at you and you're running away and you suddenly realize that it's lit everything around you.
Yes. You're in a grass
Which
field and
is-
suddenly everything is on fire.
Yeah,
out.
or like you had a wooden sword out and you're like, ooh, okay, either drop this or find some water quickly.
Right.
That's a good example.
Another example is that electricity can be conducted through metal.
Yes.
That accounts for some of the puzzles that you have to solve in the game, where you have to create a circuit by just moving around different pieces of metal. And it also accounts for a danger during thunderstorms that lightning will completely obliterate you if you're wearing something metal. Not completely obliterate, but it's
It'll knock you down.
Yeah, it's...
I discovered that way too late in the game. I was always like, well, it's funny how it always seems to find me. And then I was like, oh, you know what? I am wearing metal armor, a metal shield, carrying a metal sword, and I do have a metal bow on my back.
Yes. And let's see, what other ways does chemistry affect the game? Any fire large enough will cause an updraft.
Yes.
It will affect the wind.
I use this a lot in combat.
Right.
Yeah.
And the really cool thing that I find about it is it functions, it does function like a physics engine, where this can exist at any time, at any place, in real time. It's not a scripted event. So you have dry grass, and anywhere that you start a large enough fire in that dry grass, you'll get an updraft. So it's not necessarily scripted, it's procedural. And that's what makes it an engine. And the way these two engines cooperate is just fantastic. It's
awesome.
Yeah.
It really lets you not just sort of it, because a lot of RPGs, you're sort of at the whims of the world. Like, there's not a lot you can do to push back against whatever sort of gamey aspects of the environment you can interact with.
Right, right.
But this kind of lets you use portions of the world that feel more like world-like to your advantage when you're in combat, when you're looking for something, when you're even just wandering around the world without something to do. It makes it actually feel like you have some sort of say in it.
Right.
Even though it really means that you have less control in a lot of ways.
Yes, yes. Yeah, your plans can go awry pretty easily when they interact with the chemistry engine.
Something terrible that happened last night is I was in a bunch of mud, which you can use a Cryonis rune on because it contains water.
We'll get to that later.
Yeah, we'll talk about this. If you haven't played this game, that's okay. It's absolutely incredible. But, you know, you'll hear more about that over the course of this episode.
Yes.
But I was standing on this block, and I was trying to create another one in front of me to jump to get across mud. And I accidentally used it to destroy the one I was standing on, and pretty much, like, instant killed me. So in that case, I was like, you know what? I'm not a huge fan of this chemistry engine, but other than that, it's pretty nice.
Right, yeah. It can work in your favor, it can work against you.
Absolutely.
Just like physics can, you know, just like a physics engine in video games can.
Absolutely.
But it presents a lot of potential.
It does.
As far as exploring a world, and especially a world as large as Breath of the Wild presents.
And it does make you feel more grounded in the fact that you're not like omniscient, you're not all powerful in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
You're existing alongside a lot of other things in this world.
Yeah.
And yes, you are the most important character in the game, but also like you're a person.
Right.
Existing in a kingdom
that
abides by laws of gravity and whatnot.
Right.
Yeah. So that's sort of a fun intro. We were also talking about, so Breath of the Wild is really special and it's different from other Zelda games in that it's sort of after the bad thing happened and the bad guy won. So it's a post-apocalyptic world, technically. But it also deals with the question of technology, because it is, so if you don't know that much about the Zelda series, each game builds off of each other, sort of in the way a normal series would, except instead of being direct sequels, it works off of the idea that over and over again, there's these three characters, and they're always being reincarnated to battle out this sort of legendary tussle between good and evil. So Link, Zelda, and Ganondorf, or Ganon, are not the same people in each game, but they're reincarnated as the same characters, does that make sense?
Right.
But Zelda actually is a direct descendant from the original Zelda, theoretically.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, that's something that I found out recently that I thought was kind of peculiar, but it makes sense. She's a princess, whereas Link is always just kind of like a farm boy or a knight or some other person existing in the world.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's kind of interesting. So Breath of the Wild is chronologically last. I mean, the timeline gets very knotted. It gets very confusing. But
so I've heard.
Yes. So the world theoretically has ended a few times by the time you get to the Breath of the Wild, but in no instance has it ended so long ago from when you start playing the game.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So you wake up 100 years basically
Right.
after
Yeah.
it's ended.
In this game, Link wakes up in this shrine of resurrection after having slept for 100 years, during which time the world has kind of fallen into ruin.
Mm-hmm.
And now you have to spend the duration of the game just exploring this apocalyptic kind of, apocalyptic world, but not in the sense of like civilization is ruined.
Mm-hmm.
It's just in the sense that nature has kind of overgrown and
Yeah.
taken over most of the land. Like it's not flourishing.
Yeah.
It's just kind of existing.
Yeah, I read a really great article about this, and I don't know the exact wording they put it in, but it was like life in the middle of decay or after decay, and that's really what it feels like.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you're seeing these settlements and these towns that are familiar to these towns you've gotten used to in the Zelda series, but it really does feel like there are new people living in the areas where these towns were. And
Yeah.
they're sort of recreating what they lost 100 years ago. So it's interesting,
Right.
emotionally even.
Yeah, yeah. And then you brought up this interesting concept of the Hyrule's relationship with technology.
Absolutely.
And boy, is that presented interestingly in this game.
Yeah.
You have the Sheikah people, the Sheikah civilization that long ago created these, not only the divine beasts, which are these giant mechanized animals.
And like my favorite looking sort of, I guess they're a mixture of like bosses and dungeons. They're just
Yeah.
incredible looking.
Yeah. They're amazing, gigantic robots that are built to oversee and protect the entire kingdom.
Mm-hmm.
And then, in addition to that, they build hundreds and hundreds of of foot soldiers called guardians,
Oh
which
my
are these
God.
six-legged clay pot-looking robots
Evil
with-
little creatures.
that have lasers equipped to protect the kingdom. And that immediately presents this weird anachronistic sense. You know, why are there these robots shooting lasers at me in the
Yeah.
middle of this, like, quiet kind of medieval game?
Yeah, this like beautiful, I guess medieval would be the perfect way to describe it.
Yeah.
I mean, in a lot of ways it feels very, it's not rooted in like European
Right,
medieval
right.
lore, but it is a little bit in like medieval fantasy.
Yeah.
But you're right, having these like robotic creatures in the middle of this, it feels wrong, but it isn't.
Right. It feels out of place. And that kind of helps sell the villain, honestly.
It totally does, yeah.
But yeah, there's this weird juxtaposition of technology against Hyrule and also helping Link.
Yeah.
Because he, as soon as he wakes up in the Shrine of Resurrection, gets this little tablet around the size of a Nintendo Switch.
It's really cute.
That's called the Sheikah slate. And this is essentially how your Nintendo Switch console becomes sort of this. It has a parallel in the game.
Yeah.
You know, it can take pictures of everything. It can zoom in and act like binoculars. It is the source of runes that you get that can actually help you interact with in-game objects.
Like the Cryonis rune.
Yes, we'll go through. Let's go through all the runes. Actually,
Yeah.
you have one called Magnesis, which allows you to pick up metal objects and place them wherever you want.
And that one's my favorite one. I feel like I've found most use in that one.
Yeah, because you can move them around anywhere in 3D space, so you can not only solve just rudimentary block puzzles with them, but you can pick up a metal box and drop it onto an enemy,
Yeah, that's
and that will
very
actually
funny.
hurt them. And like what we said before with building a circuit of electricity, that would be impossible without Magnesis.
Yeah, or even like in I was doing a quest the other day where I needed to locate in this sort of shrouded, misty area where these iron balls were. And I was like, how am I going to see this? And I just put on my magnesis rune, and it lit up immediately what I could interact with, and I could see the path all the way to where I needed
that's
to
kind
be.
of a hidden advantage to
Yeah.
using the rune, which we'll talk about. The game kind of encourages hidden advantages.
The best.
But let's get through all the runes first.
Let's not get sidetracked.
Next, you've got 2 types of bomb,
Yes.
which, as far as I understand, is different from how bombs have worked in Zelda games before.
Yeah, so bombs in Zelda games have always been kind of funny because in a lot of them, there are plants, which I think is totally charming. Like, you have to pick them up off the ground. In the DS games in particular, you don't necessarily carry bombs on your person. You pick them up off the ground. But in other games, you have like a bomb bag, and you kind of collect them over the course of the game.
Right.
Or the bag comes with a set amount, and if you waste them, it regenerates. But the ruin makes it kind of interesting because you can kind of control where you're putting them more and when they explode.
Right.
Which is really useful for puzzles and combat even.
And they give you an unlimited amount.
Yeah, exactly. That's what's really nice.
Yeah. You can just keep lobbing bombs. They aren't extremely powerful in combat.
No.
Which is how they balance that that principle. But
I find them very useful and distracting.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Distracting, spreading out a group of enemies.
Yeah.
And weaker enemies, you can just take care of them with one bomb. But yeah, you get an unlimited amount in 2 shapes.
Yes,
Very
this
interesting.
is the best.
There's a cube bomb and a sphere bomb. The sphere bomb can roll around. The cube bomb will pretty much stop where you throw it.
Which is awesome, especially if you're on like a cliff face.
Yeah.
Or you don't want it, or an enemy is chasing you and you want to place it in its path.
Right.
Fantastic.
And another of my favorite things to do with the bombs is start gliding somewhere with your paraglider, and once you're in that position, drop a bomb, because as soon as when you're in the air and you have to hold onto your paraglider, summoning a bomb will just drop it below you.
Oh,
so
I've
you
never
can,
tried that.
Yeah, you can rain down a bomb on something that you need below.
Wow, you've opened my world. This is a new exciting thing for me to try.
There's so many. We've got a lot of ground to cover still.
Oh, yeah.
But yes, so there's the bombs. The third one is similar to the first one, the magnesis one, but this one is called stasis.
Yeah.
And instead of being able to carry any object in 3D space, you instead are able to stop an object from moving.
Yeah.
Just stop it in time. And during this state, it will hold on to and it will keep any kinetic energy that is shared with it.
Yeah.
So if you hit it in this state, a little arrow will appear indicating where the kinetic energy, or where the some kinetic energy is telling it to go when it unfreezes, because this is a temporary effect.
I have mixed feelings about this one, actually, because I find the system of the arrow really inaccurate and confusing. I don't know how you feel about that.
That's true. It's like an arrow of the vector of force that will act upon it when it unfreezes. It's not a direct indication of where it's going.
No, and
so if you need to chuck something long distances, then it's a little inaccurate.
Yeah, I remember there's one shrine that was so infuriating because you got these really powerful sledgehammers, and there was, I can't remember exactly how they organized it, but you had to hit them into the ball into this pit really far away.
Yeah.
And it was so infuriating because you had to hit it a few times and then switch to another weapon so it wouldn't hit it too far. And it took me way too long.
Right, yeah. Because sometimes you have to finesse something in stasis by hitting it with different weapons to force it different amounts.
Yeah.
And you also have to keep in mind that other forces, if anything else hits it, that also counts as a force. So if a boulder runs into something that it uses stasis, then that will also affect its direction.
Yep.
But eventually time unfreezes and it gets flown in that direction.
It can be really comical too. Like if you have a powerful enough stasis rune, you can freeze objects that your enemies are about to throw at you.
Yeah.
And it's so funny because if they're dumb enough, they'll be holding a boulder over their head and you'll freeze it and kick it away. And then they'll unfreeze and they'll look around all confused. And it's really good, like, physical comedy in the middle
Yeah.
of this battle.
Yeah, yeah. And that just, speaking of just combat, that presents a lot of really weird ways
Yeah.
to approach combat just by, you see a couple of enemies off in the distance and you've got a boulder here on this cliffside, so you put stasis on it and give it enough force so that it will just charge right at the enemies. Yeah, you can do that with any object. Any object that
That
is
isn't
dynamic.
rooted. Yeah.
Any object that's not already static in the ground.
Mm-hmm.
Then you've got Cryonis, which is very different from all the others. Cryonis creates a rectangular prism of ice out of any body of water. So you just select where you want this prism of ice to erect, and it will just freeze some water there and then create this pillar. And you can climb on top of it. You can get a vantage point. It can block things that are coming at you in the
Yes.
water.
You could also use it to destroy ice objects that are being thrown at you,
Yes.
which is really useful.
Yes. You can use it to raise things out of the water. You can raise
Yes.
fish out of the water. You can raise treasure chests out of the water. And on a waterfall, it becomes a stepping stone. You can create them out of waterfalls, and it won't fall down. It will just float there as a floating ice platform for you.
I think in terms of like satisfaction of use, Cryonis is the most satisfying because it has this crunchy sound as it like builds out of the ground.
Yeah,
and
that's
it
true.
just looks like little fun crunchy ice to stand on. It's very
Yeah.
satisfying.
And you can cross any body of water using it.
Yes, which is very useful, especially when you're coming across liquids that maybe aren't exactly water but are dangerous, like mud, where you really can't swim across it. Because water you can swim through. There's various things how you can interact with water. It won't instantly kill you.
Yeah.
But mud, it instantly kills you.
Yeah.
So it's extremely useful if you don't have any other way of getting across
Right.
a body of mud.
And there is also water that's too cold to swim in.
That's
it will just
true.
constantly damage you to swim in it. So it's useful to use Cryonis to get across that. It's useful. Oh, wait, one other use of Cryonis is stopping things that are flowing because of a current.
Yes. Oh my god, the currents.
The currents. There are several rivers in the game, and you can sometimes find items floating through them, or if you defeat an enemy in the water, then its items will float through the water. And yeah, it's an easy way to stop things from getting away.
Man, I've lost some good loot that way. And then there's the I don't know, do they just call it the camera rune?
I believe so. Yeah, it's just camera.
So this one's fun. We'll probably talk about it more later because we're going to talk about why it's useful. But basically, the game needs an excuse for you to take pictures in it. And this is by far the best excuse a Zelda game has ever had because you literally basically have like a computer or a version of it with you.
Right.
And you can just use it to take pictures of the game world, which is fun in a comical sense because you can take selfies and Link is very funny. And my favorite is I always take one there's an enemy running at me.
Yeah.
So you can kind of stage these hilarious
and Link
photos.
Link can pose while you're taking that selfie.
It's really good. But also, you can use it to document the world around you. And that has use in plot because this was your rune or Zelda's rune.
Right.
Or not rune, excuse me, slate, before you fell
yes,
asleep.
yes.
So you have these old photos on it and you don't remember who these people are, where these places are. And once you use those photos to find the locations in the game, it unlocks memories for you.
Yeah.
So it's this tool for plot, but also, and we'll talk about this later again, it's a way to document the world around you.
Yes.
To understand it, but also to kind of enjoy it.
Right, yeah. And that's extremely clever. You
Yeah.
know, it's always a good idea to back up this giant mechanic that you include in your game with some relevance to the story.
Absolutely, yeah.
So it makes total sense that, of course, you'd want to use this camera a bit more. It's important to you. There are photos on it of your past, and your
Yeah.
past is central to your story in this game. Link doesn't remember anything about who he is, and these photos provide a clue.
They're also
So,
really bittersweet because you're looking at these pictures of the world before it ended.
yeah.
So you'll find a ruined statue and you'll pull up your slate and you'll be able to look at this photo of what it looked like when it was in the middle of a thriving town.
Yeah, yeah. And it's interesting about the camera specifically. It's the only rune that you don't get at the beginning of the game.
Yeah.
The beginning of the game, by which I mean maybe the first like few hours.
Yeah, it takes a while.
Yeah. Is spent on this giant plateau. It's called the Great Plateau, which is a man-made plateau on top of which there is no civilization save for one man. This old man who acts as a mentor to you, teaching you how to survive in the world,
How to cook apples.
how to cook things, which we will get back to because cooking is a
boy.
huge part of this game.
Enormous.
And teaching you how to get these runes, where to get these runes, not what they are. This mysterious man has a bit more to him than meets the eye,
It's kind of
but
cheeky.
yeah. But he shows you how to get the runes. Everything else you kind of just discover on your own. You discover what the runes are, how they work, and eventually your deal with him or your goal with him is to retrieve his paraglider, which is, just a cloth paraglider, because that's the only way to get off of the plateau without dying.
And this is actually an element that's in a lot of other Zelda games, specifically, the game that came out before Breath of the Wild, Skyward Sword, where you have a sailcloth. So it's sort of an element that a lot of Zelda games include, which is a way for you to easily traverse a landscape without sacrificing, realism in a broad sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a cool kind of callback.
Yeah. Whereas the runes are very they look very out of place in this naturalistic world.
And you freak people out when you use them.
Yes,
People will
yeah.
jump and look at you like, what? It's really funny. It's really sweet how they do that.
Yeah. So that's most of the things that the Sheikah slate can do, because we were on the subject of technology and its relationship to this game. The last thing that the Sheikah slate can do is give you just some cursory or sometimes more useful information about the world. You have a map.
Oh, yes, the map.
Which, it's a huge world. It helps to have a map of it. And you are the one who charts that map in segments. We'll get to how you do that probably later.
Yeah, we'll talk about that probably with him when we document things. in the
Yeah,
game.
yeah. But it also gives you information like the ambient temperature, your sound level, how much
Yeah,
sound you're producing,
Which is really interesting.
because that allows you to tell when you're sneaking or when you're making too much noise and enemies could notice you. And let's see.
Excuse me.
It also shows your resistance to temperature.
Yes.
It also shows if you're freezing or if you're on fire or just too hot or too cold. And finally, what was I thinking?
It's your inventory.
It's your inventory.
Yeah.
Yes, that's very important.
You
Yeah.
can look at all your fun outfits.
Yes.
All these crazy objects you've picked up.
Keep track of all your items. And yes, it can search for those. If you want to, it's not a feature that everyone uses, but if you need to find something desperately, you can, and you have a picture of it, you can plug it in to the Sheikah sensor and it will direct you on a treasure hunt to find that item.
So that's interesting. I've never done that. I've used the sensor for shrines before.
Yeah.
Because that's how they sort of present it to you.
Yes.
But that's so crazy.
You know what? I don't think it gives you that right off the bat. I might have spoiled that for you.
No, I promise I won't remember.
Okay.
Guaranteed. Yeah, so I actually turned off the shrine sensor because I found it really annoying because it would be like beep, beep.
Yeah. You kind of use it only when you have no idea where a shrine might be.
But I do have... So another thing your slate can do is another rune that you don't need to use at all unless you have these is the Amiibo rune.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I scanned in Wolflink, and he will actually find stuff for you.
Wolflink is from Twilight Princess, right?
Yes, which is my favorite Zelda game.
Nice.
But he'll find stuff for you. But something annoying that he does that I'm not a super big fan of, he is a wolf. If there's like a hearty truffle on the ground or some gourmet meat or whatever, he'll eat it. And I'm like, sir, you don't need that. I need that. Please stop eating my goods. And he does not listen.
Look, you got to pay for him somehow.
He is technically like super sentient and actually has like thoughts and everything. So I feel kind of fucked up for not giving him stuff, but he's eating it off the ground.
Yeah.
So you know what?
One other thing that the Sheikah slate does, which is related to the DLC of the game, if you want me to go into this, it was shown in the trailer for the game, and I won't reveal anything more.
Go for it.
Okay. There is a motorcycle.
Oh, yes.
That Link can ride. And the moment I saw this, I burst out laughing in the trailer because that, to me, that shows that Mario Kart 8 was a big inspiration for this part of Breath of the Wild. Because Link has been on a motorcycle before in Mario Kart 8.
That's true.
And now they bring it into a canonical Legend of Zelda. I'm laughing again.
That's why he knows how to ride one.
Yeah.
You're always like, this boy only rides horses. No, wrong.
Yeah, he remembers. He knows.
Don't worry. Don't worry about it.
So yeah, one last thing the Sheikah slate can do when you earn it in the DLC is summon this motorcycle, which in some ways is more efficient than a horse. In some other ways, a horse can be superior. But it's a really cool way to get around really quickly.
Yeah.
And the only thing is that you have to fuel it with any kind of item. You just take items from your inventory, the gas tank opens up, and you put stuff into there to fuel it.
That's a little like Stephen King from a Buick 80. Like, this thing is alive, which kind of, that's a little... So if you shove like a whole roast bird in there...
It'll run...
That's a little spooky. I love it.
Weird.
It's a little spooky.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know how it works, and probably neither does Link.
Yeah, he doesn't ask a lot of questions.
No, he doesn't talk a lot. He's pretty much a silent protagonist, save for the sound, just effort sounds.
Yeah.
You know, he or laughs or screams. But he doesn't say any words.
No, and this is actually... They kind of explain this in-game for Breath of the Wild for the first time. Because it's the first game that has voice acting.
Yeah.
Not always, but in cutscenes and special moments.
Yeah.
So they had to kind of think of a way to explain why Link doesn't have a voice. Because when they created Link, the idea behind him was anybody can project themselves onto this character. He's androgynous, he doesn't talk. You can change his name in any game. Yeah. Except for this one, I think.
Except for this one.
Which is kind of peculiar. But
well, he doesn't mention his name a bunch either.
No, that's true.
Because nobody knows him.
Yeah,
you know?
That's true.
Well, few people know he's the hero of legend, but...
Yeah, so he's this character supposed to project yourself on, which is why he doesn't talk in the games, or why he's quiet or whatever, because it's supposed to be you. But in this game, they came up with the... I don't know if I want to spoil this for people, but you could read Zelda's diary, which he thinks of Link. Because he also doesn't talk in the cutscenes. And they explain why. So it's kind of cool to have this canonical reason for a character to be silent.
Yeah. It's not done often.
No, I mean, I'm thinking of like Half-Life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're just so lost in thought, you know?
Lost in the sauce. Yeah. So, do we feel like we want to move on from the Sheikah slate? It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I think we've just gone over everything that it can do.
Yeah, it's a really interesting tool, and it's an amazing way to make the inventory something that, like, doesn't feel like you're in a game. It's like, I'm using this. It's part of my character.
Yeah. And it's also a great way to, it is a manifestation of your actual game console. You know, when
yeah.
you go into the Sheikah slate, that's you using your actual Switch console as a Sheikah slate. I can think of one other example in the games that I've played. There are probably more. There's most certainly more. But one prominent example that I have to bring up because I'm Scruffy is Pikmin 3.
Aha! I knew it would happen.
In Pikmin 3, you have a similar tablet called a cup pad, which I'll explain that some other time. But it looks exactly like the Wii U gamepad, which is the console that Pikmin 3 is for.
So great.
So, like, yeah, it's this idea of manifesting your game console in this world so that when you're using a user interface, it doesn't feel like you're just bringing up a video game interface.
Yeah.
It feels like you're using a tool that exists in the real world.
And it's also
Or
kind of
the game world.
Yeah, and they're using it to their advantage as another tool of immersion.
Yeah.
Because then it's like, oh, like I feel like I'm physically holding this item.
Yeah.
Not that I'm clicking through an intense menu. Because
Right,
UI
right.
could be really, really intense to navigate.
Yeah. So yeah, there's a reason that menu is there. It exists in that world.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a strange idea, but it's really neat.
This will ease into the next thing we kind of want to talk about, which is how this is a world created first and foremost from gameplay.
Yeah.
And then the environments are shaped by that.
Yeah.
And the story is too in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Yeah, that's Nintendo's thing, really. They
Yeah.
don't create games by creating the story first and then deciding, okay, how would we play out this story? They design a prototype where you don't have any goal, but you have this fun kind of physical thing that you can do, and they build the story, the design, the music, everything from there. Great example is Splatoon. The Splatoon series. The Splatoon started with a prototype where there was just this block, this rectangular block that could shoot paint.
Interesting. I didn't know this.
Yeah, and it was just in this flat world. It was just, everything was placeholder. But the physical action of shooting paint and having it coat the ground and making a mess, that was fun. That was fun to do, even without any goal or music or design to it. It was just the action itself was rewarding.
And it is
according to
very
Nintendo.
satisfying.
Yes, and it is
in-game.
satisfying.
It's a difficult game, but
Yeah. So they molded all of the rest of the experience around that physical action.
that's so funny.
So, okay, you can create paint to coat the ground. How do you get around? Maybe you could swim through the paint that you just created. Okay, there's swimming. What does swimming imply? Maybe there's sea creatures. Okay, they're half kid, half squid.
You're a kid, you're a squid.
Yes, exactly. And then suddenly, someone probably rhymed kid and squid, or some sort of coincidence led to the idea that, okay, this is a 90s, like, really just kicking, fast-paced game.
Oh, the music in that game.
Yeah.
We'll have to talk about that a later episode.
Yeah. But like everything else about the design was came from that first physical action. The music helped it along. The gameplay of competitive turf war, like inking, graffiti,
kind of
everything
the
about
flaggy.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, all of the concepts came from that. So that's how Nintendo builds a game. Mario starts with a jump. Pikmin starts with a throw. Splatoon starts with painting the ground. Legend of Zelda starts with a character that can move around in 2D space and use a multitude of weapons and explore a finite map. It starts with Zelda 1, honestly.
Yeah.
Or at least Breath of the Wild did. They started with Zelda 1. And not only did they start with the first Legend of Zelda game, They started by creating an entire 2D prototype of
Oh my
Breath of the
God.
Wild.
See, this I didn't even know.
Yeah, they used sprites. They used sprites that were very similar to Zelda 1, and they created this full 2D prototype that demonstrated how the chemistry engine worked, that demonstrated just how big the map could be.
Oh my God.
And from this, they decided, okay, let's do all of this, but in 3D. And that's why The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild feels kind of similar to Zelda 1, where
Oh.
you're discovering parts of this grand, large map. You're talking to various people who help you along your way, who give you a limited amount of things. And you get stronger throughout the progression of this game.
You know what?
But the sorry,
Oh no,
one
go
sec.
ahead. Yeah.
But the core idea of it is discovery. The core idea of it is getting around, expanding what you know about this map, and expanding what you know about how to play this game. That's the core of Zelda 1 and Breath of the Wild.
I think it's interesting that they did that because from a gameplay standpoint, this is new because all the other Zelda games, even the ones that do play a little differently, like some of them have special mechanics like Four Swords or the Minish Cap or
Right.
etc.
Yeah.
They still, you're coming from the same place where you're building off of mechanics you already know from the other games. Like you know that you use bombs, for example. You know that you're going to be
Arrows
able
and
to
a sword and all that.
of course,
Yeah.
yeah. And you know that you're going to be able to go from one place to the other using a boomerang or a sailcloth or something like that.
Yeah.
And the way you navigate the world and talk to people is similar. You have fairies, you have the mailman, you have all this sort of recurring stuff.
Yeah.
Breath of the Wild starts over. So it's really interesting to me that they would go back to the beginning because people didn't know that coming in. It was an
Yeah.
entirely new thing.
Yeah, yeah.
So that makes a lot of sense to me.
Another thing that it does that Zelda 1 sort of does is non-linearity.
Yeah.
You have a starting point where you, in the first Zelda game, you get your Master Sword, and that's pretty much it. Then
Yeah,
you can
immediately.
Yeah.
I took that for granted so much until I played Breath of the Wild.
And in Breath of the Wild, you know, it's such a huge game, it's such a huge scalar multiplication of Zelda 1 that you kind of need the Great Plateau just to get your bearings.
Absolutely.
Um,
And sort of like test out how the world interacts with you.
Yeah, yeah. But once you do that, you can go anywhere. You can go in any direction. You are not bound by the walls necessarily. You have many, many different paths you could take. And the quest of Breath of the Wild is about getting strong enough to beat the enemy at the center. It's not about getting through a strict narrative to get to the villain. It's just about you're not strong enough to beat the final boss yet. You have to go and do this stuff to gain not only more power for yourself, but also help with defeating this enemy.
Yeah.
That's what the game is all about. That's the core of Breath of the Wild. Everything that you can do in Breath of the Wild, whether it be cooking or fishing or doing shrines or even doing the DLC, all of it is centered around making you more powerful and more able to defeat Ganon, Calamity Ganon.
Yeah, and it in that way, it's like an underdog story, which is
Yeah.
like, in terms of, excuse me, in terms of narratives, is a really satisfying story to play out because
Yeah.
just inherently we all want to root for the underdog. I mean, that's the plot of every single sports movie that's ever been made.
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, you're rooting for this weird amnesiac, like goofy kid, basically.
Yeah.
Because and all the weird, funny people around him who help him or don't, because there's this terrifying, eldritch, like truly scary abomination that's taken over and killed people.
Yeah.
And they talk about that.
Yeah.
So it's crazy to think that you are the one who can defeat it, but it also makes you really want to be the one who can defeat it.
Right, right. And the game, at certain moments, goes out of its way to let you know that you have a destiny to do this. You know, it wasn't just anyone that can get strong enough to beat this boss. It's you.
There's a really beautiful moment that I'm not going to spoil too much because it's a really amazing quest, and I think if you haven't done it and you've played the game, you should definitely do it. I'm not going to even mention the quest it's from, where you've done this kind of beautiful, great, fun thing for this person, and then you're both of you are observing it because you've created something, and he basically tells you, like, this is great, but you have other stuff to do. Like, there's something you have to do.
Yeah.
And you know what it is. But it puts in a sense of urgency into the world that isn't, like, linear, like pushing you to do something because there's nothing else to do.
Yeah.
It's pushing you to do it because you want to do it.
Yeah.
And you feel obligated to these people and to yourself to complete this Herculean task.
Right.
So it's really great. It makes you want to do it.
Absolutely, yeah. And yeah, every task that you can accomplish in this game is geared more toward that. Except maybe with the single exception of just beating up Ganon's underlings.
Yeah.
Because all that really does, I'm trying to think if there's a specific advantage to that, but all that really does is wear down your equipment.
Oh my god. So the equipment thing, we can talk about this briefly.
Sure.
So I actually, in terms of gameplay, I think it's super, super good. Because a complaint I have about the Zelda games in general is sometimes they seem too easy. And I don't know if this is because I've played a lot of them or because I usually play different kinds of games. But you have these weapons that can't break. You have... Well, that's pretty much all you have. But anyway, you have unlimited weapons. And you have this all-powerful weapon that is more powerful than any other enemy's weapon.
Yeah.
Whether or not that enemy is stronger than you. But in Breath of the Wild, it's taking kind of a leaf out of more traditional RPG books, and it's saying, these are objects, and this ties into chemistry it did too. These are objects that are made out of materials that can break.
Yeah.
And so it forces you to treat things with, I don't want to say respect, but like, forces you to be more careful with things you own.
Right.
Because
it forces you to make a plan.
There you go, exactly.
Like, I look at my weapon inventory and I think, okay, I want to save that sword. That's a nice polished sword. I'll use this weaker sword first and wait until that breaks, until I break out my, my secret weapon.
Yeah.
And like, you'll get materials from every enemy you beat. That is something, actually. Yeah, you will always get materials from enemies you beat. There's not diminishing returns.
No.
But you cycle through a lot of weapons.
Yeah,
in the game.
It can be frustrating if you went through a lot of like grinding to get this really great weapon.
Right. And all of a sudden it's telling you your sword is badly damaged. It's going to break in about 5 hits.
Yeah.
It's a controversial thing to put in the game.
Yeah.
There have been a lot of people arguing for and against it.
What would your stance be? Do you like it?
I do in some ways.
Yeah.
I feel like it's worth experimenting with.
Yes.
It's not done. It's not a perfect idea yet.
That's how I feel too, because there are certain weapons that you can repair, and it's like kind of cost to you, but you can repair them. And I think that's better than making everything immediately, like, if you break this, it's done.
Yeah.
Because the items you can repair are like special items you get from quests, basically. But it's frustrating because I found this great sword. I found it, and I beat this very difficult enemy to get it, and now I don't have it anymore. It's kind of unfair.
Yeah.
Because if a sword breaks in real life, can't you fix it?
Yeah, it's not just gone. It doesn't just disintegrate. Right. So, yeah, maybe increase the availability of repairs to weapons.
Yeah.
And then you'll start treating each weapon as a resource.
Yes.
Each weapon... Yeah.
Because I'm thinking about the way I treat ingredients in this game and materials, because I don't see them... I'm not afraid to use them because I don't see them as once in a lifetime. I see them as... This is something I can replace. This is something I can work on.
Yeah.
This is something I can learn how to do things with.
Yeah.
Whereas with weapons, it's like, oh, this is such a beautiful sword. Better not use it on this tiny enemy because I'm going to waste it.
Right.
And then it's gone forever and I'll feel terrible about it.
Yeah. Or you could just go full Minecraft and create craftable weapons, so that Link could, you know, I envision it as Link could try his best at smithing a weapon, but it's not going to be the best weapon that you can get in the game.
You know, I like that because also something I also like about this version of Link is that he has a lot of personality in this game.
Yeah.
Which is a bold move because again, it's supposed to be everybody.
Anybody, yeah.
Anybody and everybody. But I think it totally paid off. It's
Yeah.
the most likable Link besides like Wind Waker Link, but who can complain about that? This is the most likable Link we've had to date.
Yeah. All right. So, yeah, that's a bit about how this world is built for playing it.
Yeah.
This world is not. It's not really built for the story because, the story can unfold in so many different ways. It's just an underdog story, as you said. So you're kind of crafting the narrative of it.
Literally, sometimes you are crafting.
Yeah, that's true. And yeah, it takes a while. It takes exploration. So the game, or the environment is built around you playing it and making a story rather than telling one.
This is kind of a goofy example, but in one quest I was trying to get 50 bundles of wood, and I found myself like seeking out heavily wooded areas and taking an axe and cutting down wood and chopping it, and I was like, for 2.5 hours I've just been role playing as a
lumberjack.
And it has nothing to do with the plot at all. It's just me sitting in a room like chopping wood, and I'm like, but that's kind of beautiful because I'm acting out Link's little life right now. Like, he needs 50 bundles of wood. He better get down to chopping some trees. Yeah, it's kind of great.
Yeah. And we'll probably get back to that as well. Yeah, just with our experiences with this game. Okay. Where do we go next?
Well, do you want to talk a little bit about music and audio?
Sure. Yeah, that is an area where I have a little bit of knowledge.
Absolutely.
I don't mean to plug myself, but...
You know what? Plug yourself. Go for it.
I do have a video about this on YouTube, about the game audio in The Legend of Zelda, and just a couple of little quirks that make it more seamless. Sometimes, like, harder to notice, but not in a bad way. Harder to notice in that it just flows more easily into your experience of exploring this world. It's called Invisible Sound Design in Breath of the Wild.
If you haven't watched it, I really recommend you do. It's absolutely incredible.
Thank you.
And I'm not biased just because we're friends. I'm a little biased, but it's also very good.
Right. And I'm biased because I'm me.
That's true.
But anyway, the audio in this game, I'll start with the music. The music in this game seems to take a turn from previous Zelda games in that it's very minimal.
Yeah.
It does a lot of orchestrational choices and compositional choices that Zelda games have not done before. It focuses a lot on the piano. I'll get back to that actually. It does use quite a few melodies that have been in previous Zelda games, but they've been stretched in ways that sometimes make them almost unrecognizable. Like they're quiet or they're slow.
Which is really fun if you've heard these songs before.
Yeah.
Or these, like you said, melodies.
Right.
Because you feel very proud of yourself when you recognize it.
Exactly, yeah.
Wait a minute, I know that song. Yeah.
So, and that to me implies that there's a history here.
Yes.
The history is kind of this ghost in this world, and it's slowly revealing itself to Link as he figures out more about the world.
Oh, beautiful.
But as you're just exploring the area, whether on a horse or just on foot.
Or a motorcycle.
Or a motorcycle. You'll start... Actually, you don't get the horse music from the motorcycle.
Really?
Yeah.
Do you get different music?
You'll just get the foot music sometimes.
Huh.
It's
Interesting.
Weird.
Okay.
The horse music is specifically for the galloping of horse.
Nice.
But when you're on foot or on a horse, you get this piano, and it's on a horse. It's rhythmic because, as I said, it's going along with the galloping of the horse. It's rhythmic and it's very kind of spacey. It's kind of a new neoclassical style of composition. Let me pull it up, actually.
Oh, yeah, we can totally do this.
Let's see. Let me see if I can find the horse music. Hopefully that doesn't mean... I think this is it. Let's see if this plays. Yeah, there we go. So it's got these very kind of disjointed, plunky, neoclassical piano elements. And like the piano is on different sides of stereo, different distances. It's just like this this rendition of sounds that are occurring around you as you're traveling by horse on piano. The piano has been described as having a lot of personality of its own, but in a lot of ways having less personality than other instruments. And right here, there is a callback to a previous Zelda melody, very slow.
Huh, I'm trying to pick out which one.
Ba, 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 ba. That's it.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
Oh wow, I've never even thought about that.
Yeah, yeah. It's so subtle.
Oh my god. I get so lost in the galloping.
Right. It's so subtle and so slow, it's not trying to get you to recognize it. But yeah, it's just like subtle memories of the past mixed with the sounds of now. The sounds of now being this weird fantasy medieval but also technologically advanced world. And I feel like the piano is a great medium of an instrument between those. Woodwind instruments are they're old. Brass woodwind instruments, they have an old sound to them. And they also have a lot of distinct personality to them.
Sorry, my computer just chimed.
That's okay.
Let me mute that bad boy.
Another thing that we get in this soundtrack is synthesizers. Let me pull up the combat music. In combat, yeah, here we go. You've got a lot of...
Oh, I get so stressed out.
I'm sorry. I should have warned you.
No, go ahead.
But in combat, you have a lot of synthesized music, and it's very rhythmic. It's very strictly minimalist. Who am I trying to think of? Like Adam Wright. It's very strictly. I'm sorry, I can't listen and talk at the same time.
No worries.
It's very strictly minimalist. It's got a lot of rhythms happening at once, and they're changing over time. Steve Reich, that's the name I was thinking of.
Oh, I know him.
Yeah.
I know this.
It's reminiscent of that style, but with synthesizers in it. And you're thinking, what is that style doing in this game? This is a Legend of Zelda game, you know? Like, what gives?
Yeah.
Why is that sound so new? And to me, it's that you have these echoes of the past through Zelda melodies, older Zelda melodies. You have echoes of the future through the synths and the Guardians and the Sheikah technology. And then you have the piano, which is kind of the midway between all of this. The piano is a very open instrument in that you can fill it with a lot of different personalities.
Huh.
Kind of like Link.
Yeah.
The piano is kind of this unobstructed, just open sound. It can fill a lot of different roles. And it can be somber, it can be playful, but it's there. And it's kind of in the middle of Western music history as we teach it. There used to be the harpsichord, and then there was the forte piano, which was so revolutionary because forte piano, loud, soft, it could produce dynamics, it could produce different loudness. And yeah, that allowed it to portray a lot of personality and kind of emulate different orchestral sounds. But it's not any of them. And so it sort of has this weird relationship with other instruments. And I think it's a great way to personify the openness of this game without necessarily putting a distinct personality on Link or the adventures that he goes through.
That's totally amazing. I never even thought about how that might reflect the actual gameplay itself.
Yeah. And of course, not all of the soundtrack is based around piano. There's a lot of orchestral moments. There's a lot of different instrumentation used, but the piano weaves its way through all of it. And the most common song that you hear is this just very open, arrhythmic exploration tune, which just follows Link around as he's exploring. And it's quiet. It keeps you guessing when it will actually happen. And
is it?
Some people say that it puts them to sleep, which I can totally understand.
To say, I listen to Breath of the Wild music specifically when I can't go to sleep, because it has that. It doesn't like jar you at all. It definitely feels like it's sort of drawing you along.
Yeah.
And the piano's really peaceful.
Yeah. So like that's something with the piano that you have to contend with.
Yeah.
It can be peaceful at times and sometimes overly peaceful, but the environment is also peaceful.
It's
you
true.
know, it's filled with enemies, sure, but there are these moments where you're just in a field, clear as day. The piano is really nice and just.
I'm thinking of once I was waiting out a thunderstorm, because sometimes that's all you can do. I couldn't light a fire. I had too many weapons. And I was sitting sort of sheltering under an old well. And I was in a field. I can't remember where it was. I want to say Central Hyrule, but I think it was the Central Hyrule area. And I was just like looking up at the sky, and distantly there was thunder and whatnot.
Yeah.
And listening to this like soft music and just like watching the world happen around me. And I was like, it's annoying that I have to sit here and wait, but it's very beautiful. I was like, okay, this is fine. I'm enjoying myself.
Yeah.
It was really cinematic.
Right,
yeah.
right. Yeah, sometimes you just think, okay, maybe I'll just sit here, you know?
Yeah.
This actually isn't that bad.
Yeah.
Because the environment, the graphics look great. The colors are very painterly.
Yes.
And it's just nice to look at while you're waiting for something to clear up. So it's a game about patience. Yeah.
In a lot of ways.
If a game takes 200 hours, then yeah, it's going to involve some patience.
But in a lot of ways, I feel like, unlike other games that take 200 hours, even some other RPGs that take that long, it never feels like length.
Yeah.
It feels like just living.
Yeah.
Which I think is that's how I determine a good RPG game. Does it feel like I'm just existing inside this world at the downtimes, or does it feel like I'm waiting for something to happen? And I think Breath of the Wild is an amazing example of it feels like I'm existing inside this world.
Yeah. Also, one other thing about the piano that I wanted to mention. You hear it often going forwards, but sometimes you hear the piano backwards, a reverse piano note.
That used to spook me.
Yeah. And I believe that forwards piano represents Link, his own adventure, his openness to this world. Reverse piano represents the villain, Calamity Ganon.
This totally ties into the new trailer for Breath of the Wild 2.
Yeah, where the music is in reverse.
It's in reverse.
Reverse piano occurs every so often while you're exploring, and it just reminds you this may be serene, it may be tranquil, but you're still on a mission. Ganon is still out there, and there's still danger involved.
Yeah.
And there's an event that happens every so often. Every 2 full moons, is it? Something like that?
Moon?
Yes.
Yeah.
The blood moon. One of my favorite events in the game, because you just see it for the first time. The moon is suddenly swollen and red and much larger, and there's these tendrils of light around it, and you're just like, what the heck is going on?
It's really scary
now
the first time it happens.
Against me?
Yeah. Now the moon's against me.
Not the first time the moon has been against Link.
No,
but
oh boy, that's really true.
But
and definitely not the last.
But Yeah, every so often the full moon becomes really large and red, and when midnight strikes, it becomes the blood moon.
Link, the blood moon rises.
Yes.
Be careful, Link.
Yes. And Zelda comes through to tell you to be careful because the blood moon makes all enemies in their area respawn.
Oh my gosh. I can't even tell you how annoying this can be.
Yeah. But it's also just kind of scary.
Yeah.
Because it turns the sky all black and red, and like the clouds suddenly start moving extremely fast, and it leads up to midnight when you just are forced to pause. Your actions are forced to pause for a second so that you can just witness the moon red in the sky, and then it just goes back to being a normal moon.
And it's really terrifying because it's like literally the dead rising.
Yeah.
Which so Zelda has gotten very dark in the past, and this is by far not the darkest game.
Yeah.
And they're saying Breath of the Wild 2 is going to be even darker than Majora's Mask. We'll see, Nintendo. But this in particular I think is very scary because it implies that these creatures you're killing can't really die, or that they're being brought constantly dragged back to life.
Or that Ganon just has a strength in numbers and he's creating them or something like that.
And he has some sort of supernatural power over nature. Which
Yeah.
is very scary to think about.
He can just turn the moon red and bring back all of these enemies.
Yeah.
That is scary. It lets you know that this power, this being that you're up against, is something that no ordinary person could defeat.
He's somehow bested nature
Yeah.
enough to make it like bend to his whims.
Yeah.
Which is very scary.
That brings me to another subject that gets me on just the audio for a little bit.
Yeah.
The audio in this game is extremely well composed, and I go through a couple secrets of it in the video that I mentioned, but just know for now that there are pretty much multiple sounds for every sound that needs to happen in the game.
Yeah.
So that it doesn't get old, so that sounds don't get old. And everything's mixed really well. You've got a lot of different sounds for like combat, a lot of different sounds for just floating through the air, a lot of ambient sounds for every different kind of environment. And one of my favorite sounds in the game, even though it's also one of the most unnerving sounds in the game, is this other way that Ganon has taken over nature, where there are these pools of malice. That's what they're called, pools of malice, which is just this
gooey,
black
purpley
goop with like purple veins of color in it.
It looks genuinely upsetting.
Yeah. And if you stand in it, of course, you'll take damage. But just being near it, it creates this really unnerving sound that's like all the way in the ends of the stereo, so it like makes your hairs stand up on end. And I can't describe it to you. I can't imitate it. I'm pretty sure they created it electronically, but it's something that you kind of have to hear in game to truly experience.
And it kind of fits into this thing we've been talking about, where there's this sort of eyesore in the world, and it's this broken, possessed technology.
Yeah.
That feels like a glitch.
Yeah,
almost,
yeah.
In this tranquil.
It does sound kind of
medieval-
glitchy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because something's wrong, something's broken.
Right,
So it
right.
totally, like, subconsciously feeds into that, which is amazing.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
My favorite sound, just briefly, and this is very niche and weird, I don't know why I like it, is when you're talking to Impa. She has things hanging from her hat, and every time she moves slightly, you'll kind of just hear them, like, lightly, like, I don't know if you guys can hear that. I'm, like, tapping something. Just clanging against each other.
Yeah.
And it's stuff like that where it's like when you're doing Foley or sound design for a piece and you have to decide if you want to make it realistic and, like, rooted in, like, body sounds and diegetic sounds, or if you want to be totally wild with it.
Yeah.
And I think it's a perfect mix of both, because this is something a sound a person would make, but it's also the only sound she's making. So it kind of, it makes it part of her personality instead of just a sort of remnant of the physics of the world.
You know what it is? It's cinematic sound design.
Yes, absolutely.
They're directing your attention to what they're directing your attention the way they want, so that everything is clear, not exactly realistic, but clear.
It makes you think like, oh, this is a strange old woman wearing this really ornate thing on her head.
Yeah.
So she has some sort of level of importance.
Yeah.
And it's also just a satisfying thing to hear. You're not sitting there in complete silence, pressing X, skipping through the dialogue.
Right.
Yeah.
I could go on and on about the music and the audio. I don't want to take up the whole time with that. I will go ahead and just say some of my favorite lines from Link. Because he has hundreds of just sounds for effort, different actions. He doesn't have any words, but he speaks volumes through his action sounds.
And this is a staple of Zelda games.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Exactly.
Yeah.
He normally has a pretty like dramatic voice. Like if he swings a sword, then he'll go ha or something like that. You know, my voice cracked while doing that.
That's okay. I've been coughing this whole time.
But he'll scream a bunch. He's into it.
Yeah.
And some of my favorite voice lines from this game, there's two. There's one where he's trying to climb something and then he's suddenly slipping down. He's losing his grip and he just goes.
Yeah, that one's really funny. It's frustrating.
Yeah, and it's exactly I can feel that sound.
Yeah.
Like I'm with you, Link. I wouldn't maybe not make that sound, but I feel that sound.
Yeah.
And then my other favorite is just the little nuance of personality that he put into one sound that he makes while comforting a horse. While you're riding a horse in this game, you have to make sure that it isn't scared and that its relationship with you, its bond with you grows so that, it doesn't, so that it follows your directions.
Mm-hmm. And so you feel extra bad if anything bad happens to it.
Yes. So every now and then, if you comfort your horse, if you soothe your horse while you're riding it, then that will allow you to replenish any of the times that you made it go extra fast. If you made it gallop extra fast, the horse will like you a little more. It's nice. And Link makes sounds to go along with this, like ha ha, just very nervous, comforting. But my favorite one is where he goes like ha, with this tiny little lilt at the end, and it's like you can immediately hear he's saying like something like, "Oh, who's a pretty horse?" Like he's just ha.
Oh my gosh,
it's wonderful.
And canonically, Link loves horses.
Yeah.
He's a horse girl, so this is like a this is a recurring thing. So that makes that seem even more poignant and sweet.
Yeah,
and like cute.
Yeah, and it's something that he remembers.
Yeah.
Out of all of this stuff that he doesn't remember about himself, he can instantly get up on a horse and grow and bond with it.
Yeah.
So that's very nice. And definitely play this game with open ears.
Yes. And let yourself be immersed in it. Don't skip things because you're trying to get to something else. Yeah. Or don't play music while you're playing just because you don't think it's important, because you're missing a lot of stuff like that, like story and character and personality in the game that you're not going to get if you're playing it silent or if you're playing it other things over it.
And it doesn't just present itself outright. No. Link doesn't know exactly what to do in this game. In other games, you've got an overworld theme where Link already has... Yeah, exactly. Link has that determination already. He knows exactly what to do and he knows where to go. So it makes sense that and also, the area is much smaller, so you have to spend a lot less time listening to it. So it doesn't get old. In this game, you've got a huge environment. It's all connected. There's very few, in the outdoors, there's no transitions between loading zones. It's all just one thing. So it kind of makes sense that you'd have no overworld, not really an overworld theme, but an exploration theme. Yeah. And it's not as clear. It doesn't present itself outright, but if you explore, it will reveal itself to you. Yeah. And I love that.
It's fantastic.
Yeah. So those are my opening notes on music and sound to be elaborated at a later date.
So this might be a good transition because we've been talking for a while, just into like the little specific things we like about the game
Sure.
and the things we don't like about the game.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
just the way it feels in general.
Yeah.
So
You want to go first, Marley?
sure, I'll go first.
Okay.
I'm looking at this handy little list we've created. Okay, so what my favorite quest so far, and this is how I play most RPGs. If you've listened to this show, you know this, but also just if you know me, is I get really, really intensely into like side quests that don't like affect the main quest at all, because I think it's a really good testament to how good the writers of the game are and how successful they've been in building a world that you actually want to play in.
Yeah.
Because everyone can think of a quest in an RPG that felt so grindy and like shoehorned in for a reason that they just hated it so much.
Yeah, yeah.
So I measure a game's success based on how good their quests that mean nothing are and how bad their quests that you have to do are. So Breath of the Wild,
I love it. It's great.
Breath of the Wild passed my test pretty well because on one hand, there are a few really irritating, annoying things you have to do, but most of them are really great and fun, and even if they are difficult, they're rewarding and they don't take up too much of your time.
Yeah.
But then the stuff that you don't have to do, that's optional, is so emotionally rewarding that I don't feel an obligation to do it, but I feel a desire to do it.
Yeah.
So my favorite quest so far in that regard is Tarrytown, which we opened the episode by playing a little bit of the theme for.
Yes, that's right.
So Tarrytown's really special because I think it's the first part of the game where I felt like I wasn't being told what to do. I wasn't being drawn by destiny at all.
Yeah.
It was Link deciding to do something because he wanted to do something nice for someone else.
Yeah. Can I say something about the intro to that quest,
Yeah,
actually?
absolutely.
So you get into this quest by finding out that one of these construction workers from a construction company is going off to start his own town, and he's leaving this construction company.
Yeah.
And then as soon as he does that in this dialogue, he actually stands up and he walks away, and you hear this little motif of Tarrytown, like da-da, da-da. Da, 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 and the piano just flourishes a little bit, and it sounds so sad.
Yeah.
And I kind of cracked up at that moment because I'm like, wow, I didn't know that I had to care about that so much.
And it
but
does
then you.
that. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say it does that with every character in that quest from
yes,
now on.
exactly. Yeah. And then it starts to make sense. Once you encounter him later, you were like, oh, he wasn't kidding.
No.
Like, that's serious. He wasn't just leaving to start his own town to like get him out of this quest.
No.
He went and started another town, and it's on the map now.
Yeah.
And this is like a significant part of the map that you can change.
Yeah, and that's also what's really special about it, because it's not like crafting or fort building or other stuff that have been in other games. It's like it feels like to me like being a good neighbor.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, I am a part of this world, and I am trying to defeat this giant evil entity, but I also live here.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, what do I want to do to make a positive impact on the place I'm living in?
That's so great.
Yeah, it's beautiful, and it also feels like this is a part of Link that isn't tied to destiny, if that makes sense. Like, this is something he wanted to do on his own.
Yeah.
And it's making friends that have no benefit to you in battle.
Right.
Is kind of rare in Zelda games. Like, when you make a friend, it's because they can help you.
Right.
Yeah.
And every quest will give you materials and whatnot, but
this doesn't give you materials per se, but it gives you opportunities that are like, oh, I have an extra place to buy this, or I have an
It
extra place
opens
to
up
sleep at
shops,
night.
and yeah.
But more than that, it's like, it's not. Yeah, these people aren't doing it for you.
Yeah.
They're doing it because you help them, but they have their own little life, and you're helping them set it up. It's really beautiful.
It's beautiful.
Yeah. If you haven't played the game, this quest is basically you help this construction worker. Bolson is the name of the company.
Bolson is the company.
And his name
I think Hudson.
Hudson, yes.
Yeah.
And he's trying to start this town, but he can't he needs help, but he can only hire people whose name ends in son, which is compliant to the construction company sort of bylaws.
Policy, yeah.
Policy. So you kind of go on this weird expedition where you're trying to bring together all these people from other parts of Hyrule.
Which are all over the map.
All over the map to come live in this town together. And that's another thing I really love about it. Because Hyrule is really interesting, and there's different groups of people who look completely different. So there's like the Zora, which are based off of fish.
Mm-hmm.
Then there's the Gerudo and Hylians. I never know how to say that. They've never spoken before now. Who are both humanoids, basically. They look like humans.
Mm-hmm.
They look slightly different.
Yeah.
But in those two groups, there's a lot of diversity and difference in Breath of the Wild.
And then there's the Goron.
The Gorons, who are like
rock people.
Rock turtle-y kind of people.
Yeah. And then finally the Rito, which are bird people.
So you've got like 2 human groups, and you've got 3 non-human kind of looking groups.
Yeah. And then the Koroks, which are tree people.
I love them. But they all exist in their own parts of the world.
Yeah.
Like there's like the Goron region, and there's the region where the Zora live, and there's the region where the Gerudo live, and there's the region where the Hylians live. And they interact with each other because they go and visit each other, and you're visiting between them.
Right.
But they don't live together. They do in rare instances.
Yeah.
But Tarrytown's really cool because it's a town that's full of all different kinds of people.
Yeah.
From the world. So it's like, it's just really special. It's really interesting.
It is.
And it feels very much like a product of, okay, it's been 100 years since the world ended, and we're all still kind of stuck in our ways. But why? Like, why do we have to be like that?
Yeah.
So it's sort of people moving on.
Yeah.
Without you necessarily, which I think is great.
It's great.
Yeah.
But you are instrumental to building it.
Oh, absolutely.
Because you're the hero of Legend. You need to set an example for this world that you're saving.
Yeah. I mean, there's no point in saving it if you aren't nice to each other.
Yes.
It's beautiful.
For
I think it's very nice. Not to be sappy, but you know what I mean.
Yes. Now, I'll bring up something that I suggested for just little quirky things about this game that make it that much better. The narrative of the Yiga clan.
Yes.
Which is this clan of, like, ninja armor clad warriors, who are intent on destroying the hero of Legend.
Yep. And they're an offshoot of the Sheikah.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yeah, so they're Sheikah. They're from the Sheikah tribe, and I'm trying to remember exactly how it's worded. They became disenchanted with sort of the technology and the legend, and they felt wronged by it.
Yeah.
So they made it their ambition to destroy the hero and the princess.
Yeah. What I like about them most is that they have this cartoonish break from the pace of the rest of the game. I mainly enjoy them from like a gameplay perspective. So imagine this. You're walking along a path trying to get to your next town. You see some passerby on the road crying. And you open up a dialogue to, find out what's wrong.
Yeah, which you've done before, and it's
right,
worked.
Exactly, yeah. And they'll start to talk about what's wrong, and what's wrong is that the hero of Legend, which they identify as you, is still alive.
Yeah.
And they immediately start to like talk about things that no one knows about, like the Sheikah slate, or that you're Link, or that you've been sleeping for 100 years. And then suddenly they reveal their identity. They morph into the they like, in a cloud of smoke, they poof into the Yiga clansmen and start to attack you. And that just ensues a little battle that's not all that difficult.
No, it's pretty easy.
Yeah.
They're pretty fast, but
they're
they
pretty
have
fast.
low health.
Right. And once you defeat them, you get a couple of rupees, the in-game currency, and bananas.
Yes, I love the bananas.
You get bananas
Utterly
of all
confused
things.
At first.
Yes. And every one of these the Yiga clan carries bananas with them.
Uh-huh.
And eventually you start to find their headquarters.
Yes.
And there's bananas everywhere.
Everywhere, like in piles, like
Yeah.
all over the place.
And yeah, there's one part of the Yiga clan that's actually one of my complaints, and I think it's also one of yours with the game, which is that there's this part where you're staking out the Yiga clan hideout, and it's this part of the game where you are punished if you try to attack the Yiga clan outright.
This is one of my big complaints about the game.
Yeah. I'm with you there.
Yeah.
Instead, you have to throw bananas around in order to distract these Yiga guards so that you can sneak strike them, which is a way of, crawling up behind them and hitting them in the back.
It's basically the Hitman games.
Yeah. It's the stealth part of Breath of the Wild. And the problem is that it feels kind of forced.
Yeah, in a way that no other combat in the game does.
Exactly, yeah.
You're allowed to problem solve and be weird and creative about it.
You're encouraged.
Encouraged, even. In every instance except for this one.
Yeah.
Where it's like, you know what, this would be fun if I could drop some crates, if I could magnesis some stuff, if I could be creative about it.
Yeah, exactly.
But instead it's forcing you to do the same action over and over again.
Right. So, in that regard, the Yiga clan is also one of my peeves with the game.
Yeah.
But I just love how cartoony they are.
They're really funny. They're like, you know how in some animes there's like the actual villain who's very serious and scary?
Yeah.
And then there's like the goony, like secondary villain.
They feel exactly like that.
They feel so much like that. The henchmen.
Yes.
They're also kind of like Bond henchmen, where it's like, you're not hard to defeat. You've got way more flavor and personality.
Yeah.
You're not difficult, but you're still, we like you.
Yeah.
We don't want to like you, but we do.
There's one guy in particular where you can... he's actually a shop. He'll sell you like 5 entries of bananas for 999
I remember
rupees.
him, yeah. They'll
So-
be really funny when they pop out at you, too.
Yeah.
They'll be like, oh, it's so sad. Because you aren't dead. And they'll do this transformation thing, and I'm like, wow, you know what?
You prepared this.
You were a theater kid, weren't you?
Okay.
Yeah.
But those are large parts of the game that we really enjoy.
Yes.
We've also written down some smaller, not as advertised parts of the game.
Yeah.
Things that happen more by chance, or just you happen upon them at a certain time of day.
Mm-hmm.
One of them is star fragments.
Yeah, these
we
are
wrote
really
this down.
interesting.
I don't know how to predict this. I'm pretty sure it's like random and very rare.
And I almost like peed my pants the first time I saw it. I was like, what the heck is that?
Something fell down from the sky.
Yeah.
A literal shooting star. And it creates this beam of light off in the distance, and you're like, well, okay.
Yeah.
I have to go check that out. You get to it, and it becomes this little treasure chest, and you open it up, and you get a star fragment, which is like this glowing piece of rock.
Looks like lychee.
Yeah, that you can use in cooking.
Mm-hmm.
We still need to get to cooking.
Oh, man.
We'll get to that.
We'll end with cooking.
We'll end with cooking.
We'll do like 1 or 2 more things and we'll do cooking.
Sure.
Not to spoil for everyone, but like we're live. We can't talk about this privately.
So star fragments, nice. And it's a little annoying when they're required for a particular like recipe or clothing upgrade, and so you have to just wait for them to happen to appear.
Except for that little girl.
True.
There's a little girl near the Korok Forest who, if you float something with a balloon,
she'll
might
give you a star fragment.
fragment.
Yeah. That's at least one freebie.
Yeah.
I don't know if it comes back.
I don't think so, yeah.
Hoard your star fragments.
Oh,
They
yeah.
are a precious resource. Next thing on this little list of neat little details is Kilton's Monster Shop.
Oh, I love Kilton. So he's kind of a throwback to Majora's Mask in a little, in my opinion, like thematically, he feels like he's right out of Majora's Mask. In that he's this bizarre, creepy, I think it's established that he's a Hylian.
I'm not sure.
But we're not really sure. He's this kind of creepy dude.
Yeah, and he's creepy to everyone in the game.
Oh, yeah, and
Everyone's
people
suspicious.
will tell you, yeah. But he's not malevolent, but he's really into monsters. It's like they're his favorite thing in the world.
Yeah.
And he'll make you monster extract, I think it's called, or is
Yes.
it called elixir? I
He'll
think it's
make you
extract.
plenty of things. He can
Yeah.
make you an elixir that kind of randomizes the effect of a cooked dish.
Yeah.
He can make you different masks that allow you to disguise yourself as different enemies.
My favorite thing about these masks, if you're wearing it, even if you're not around these enemies, Link will assume the like crouch,
mannerisms,
the
yeah.
mannerisms of the creature. So it's like he looks like a little feral, weird kid on Halloween after eating like 10 pounds of
Oh my
candy.
God.
And I'm like, yeah, you go enjoy yourself. Yeah.
And one of my favorite things that he can make you is the squeaky hammer,
Yeah.
which is a weapon that is extremely weak and not very durable. But hitting an enemy 4 times in succession will activate the spring in it, which
Yes.
will just launch them.
Oh my God. He's so funny. And he's also like, I don't know. He's creepy in a way that like I Spy books are creepy.
Yeah.
Like, you're not dangerous or wrong or anything. You're off. And everybody knows it. The music is kind of weird.
Yeah.
He only shows up at night outside certain towns.
Yes, and at random. You don't know which of his specified locations he'll end up at.
For me, he showed up first at Tarrytown, which I
Oh,
thought was
really?
very weird.
Interesting.
So he's just a really fun part of the game. That his items can be really useful. The masks definitely help me when I'm trying to like get through an enemy base.
Yeah.
But more than anything, he's just really weird and funny. And he's your friend, but you don't really like him that much. Because he is creepy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, we got to talk about the dragons.
Oh, yes.
This is, I'd say, not extremely spoilery, but you're well into the game by the time you encounter dragons.
Yeah.
There are 3 dragons, electric one, fire one, and a ice one.
One's name is Farosh.
Yes. Let me look these up just so that I make sure we get these right.
They're really beautiful looking. I don't know what culture of dragon they're based off of, because they're not European dragons.
Yeah.
They're like really long.
Well,
and sort of graceful looking.
when you're near them, a theme will play.
Yes.
And it features erhu, which is a Chinese instrument, a Chinese string instrument.
Oh. They do kind of look like Chinese dragons.
Yeah, in a way.
In a little bit.
So there's these giant flying dragons. They're very long and very large. And while they're flying around, they create these just elements around them based on their color. And that, they're not really hostile. They're just doing that because they're the spirit of that element.
Yeah.
But you can hit different parts of them to receive these like sacred scales or teeth or claw or tail part.
And it doesn't
of this
hurt
dragon.
them.
Yeah.
They don't even notice you, really.
They seem to be kind of like a deity of sorts. Yeah. But then that is a very powerful item. You can use it to upgrade some clothes, or I think you can use it in cooking.
You can. I don't think it does anything. It might boost effects.
I hope so.
I've got 2 scales.
Yeah.
But
and you can put them in important sacred spots, like sacred fountains, in order to unlock more, like unlock a shrine or unlock some lore.
This actually ties into something I really love about the Zelda games in general, is that they're not rooted in any mythology we know they're not parallel to the real world in like the way like Elder Scrolls is, where they have like medieval fantasy or Dark Souls. They're taking inspiration from a lot of different parts of the world and a lot of different parts of fiction and mythology, but also history. So this religion that exists, there's multiple religions that exist, but the main one in the Zelda games doesn't feel enough like anything in the real world to make you immediately associate it with that.
Yeah.
But also has enough in common with like mythology from our past that we can relate to it and understand it as a story element. But it's also just a super interesting fake religion. It has gods and goddesses, and it has fairies, and it has like minor deities. So it's like this weird mix of everything.
Yeah. You can even pray to Hylia.
Yeah,
you
do.
find statues to pray to the goddess Hylia,
And Zelda is a form of the goddess Hylia.
yeah, yeah.
So
And like the goddess Hylia will actually speak back and
Yeah.
give you more health or more stamina for traveling about this world.
and in it has evil gods and trickster gods and like
Shrines to the gods.
yeah, and shrines, and then it has the fairy elements, and it's just this incredible, weird, bizarre, ever malleable religion that exists in every single Zelda game, and it kind of reminds you that all these games, not all of them because they have different timelines, but in general, all these games are taking place. That was very scary. All these games are taking place in the same world as it changes over time. So this legends, mythology, and folklore is all getting passed down and changing over the generations.
Yeah, yeah. You know something I just realized, which is also a product of different religions?
Yeah.
These dragons' names have influenced the place names.
Yeah.
You've got Nadra, the water dragon, from which Mount Lanayru comes.
Yeah.
That's amazing. And then you've got Dinral, which is the fire dragon. It hangs out near Death Mountain. So perhaps there's a name connection. There's definitely a name connection with Farosh, the electric dragon, from which the Faron grasslands and the Faron Sea are named.
Yes.
So that's awesome.
My favorite thing about the dragons is that the first time you see them, you hear this different music, and they were rising out of the ground.
Yeah.
And it's literally like mesmerizing.
Yeah.
Like you've seen something, you're like, what the hell is that? And it's your immediate reaction is it's gonna kill me. It doesn't even care about you.
Right. The music is just kind of inspiring awe, you know?
Totally. And it makes you really literally put down everything you're doing in the game and just watch it.
Yeah.
Because they just kind of float around. They kind of move like snakes. They're really interesting.
Yeah. And they're so colorful and
yeah, they're beautiful, and it's really, I don't know, it's kind of mesmerizing. It really does feel like you're witnessing something sort of euphoric.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's great.
Okay.
The Lord of the Mountain ties into that a little bit.
I want to touch on the Lord of the Mountain.
Yeah.
It's a little bit of a spoilery thing as well.
We will not linger.
Lord of the Mountain comes out of kind of a folk tale that you hear about this strange, again, kind of deified being on one of the lesser mountains in the game. And eventually you will start to see like this teal glow coming from that mountain. And if you go there, you find this very rare animal called a bloopy, which is kind of like a rabbit, but it's glowing and...
And you sometimes see these around fairy fountains too.
Yeah. If you are able to, like, poke one or hit one, then it will give you rupees as it departs. But it lasts very little time, and it's presented as kind of magical, kind of mysterious. But eventually you see a bunch of them on top of this mountain, along with this larger animal that it's got like tons of eyes, and it's also just glowing. It makes very strange sounds, and you can mount it like a horse. It's called the Lord of the Mountain, and it's like the weirdest, rarest animal that you can ride in this game. You can ride a lot of animals.
Yeah, you can ride bears, deer,
skeleton horses.
Yeah.
But this one, there's only one, and you can't save it. You can't take it to a stable like the horses and register it to ride later. But it also just has very magical properties to it. Endless stamina, I think.
Yeah.
Is what it has.
It's just, and it's like it's just another beautiful product of this realized fantasy world.
Right.
Yeah.
Where folk tales come true.
Are real.
Yeah.
Yeah, it satisfies that part of you that always wishes, like that always believes in that stuff.
Yeah.
Like especially when you're a kid.
Yeah.
Like that this magical thing will happen because of the folktales around it.
I think that brings me to something that I wanted to make sure that I mentioned about this game, a larger idea about this game. And a larger idea about the Legend of Zelda series in general. It has a timeline. Some people don't agree with the timeline, but it has an official one. And as you said, it knots in various ways, and like it's getting retconned here and there.
Yeah.
And I do respect it. I enjoy that timeline.
It's definitely interesting.
Yeah,
it's
very
fascinating
interesting.
One.
Yeah. But at the same time, like to consider these as stories. These are legends. It's the Legend of Zelda. Someone is telling you these around a campfire. And
usually the games open with someone telling you the story.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And it's a different person each time.
Mhm.
You know, there's the
Except
same.
for once, the same person does tell it twice.
Ooh.
Actually, in 3 games.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, I have yet to experience that.
I will not tell you which ones.
But as far as I can tell, there's these recurring characters who are the archetypes of the story.
Yeah.
But they're always set in different ways. They go on different adventures. And there's like little details that I believe are the storytellers inserting their own conception, their own interpretation of this world into this legend. So like this is my version of the Legend of Zelda, you know? Like
Yeah.
this is how I would run this story if I told it around a campfire, for example. Not me, but just the storyteller.
Yeah.
And I like thinking about the Legend of Zelda that way, because that means that people are different storytellers might be getting things wrong, or just like inserting their own ideas or ramifications or their own folk tales, their own other legends into this game. But in the diegetic world of that legend, all of that stuff is coming true. You know, all of that fantasy stuff, you can tell as tall of a tale as you want, but it becomes a real a world where all of that stuff happens. So you can have these dragons, these lords of the mountain appear.
And you can
it's
also
your
have
story.
a thing that takes photographs.
Yeah. Exactly.
And
so
clan, like ninja clan members that love bananas.
Yes.
Which is something a 5-year-old would say to you after having 16 glasses of juice at a birthday party.
So yeah, that's how I like to think about the Legend of Zelda. The legends of Zelda.
The collective legends of Zelda.
Yes.
Lovely.
And you know that someone is eventually going to try and put it all into a textbook. And that's going to be like the textbook Legend of Zelda.
Yep.
And Link's going to have to deal with whatever that brings and how all of these legends kind of mesh together. So, yeah, that was a larger take on the Legend of Zelda series. And now I think would be a good time to get to a big part of the game that is one of our favorite parts of the game.
Yes, and this is probably what we'll end with.
Yeah.
Because
it's getting close to our limit on the time.
Yeah, and it's just this part of the game is like something that shouldn't be so fun and fulfilling, and yet it so is. So let's get into it. Let's talk about cooking.
Cooking in this game is extremely detailed. It's extremely intricate, and it didn't have to be.
No.
But there are hundreds of, or at least dozens of ingredients that you can collect around Hyrule. Different types of fish, different types of fruit, different types of mushrooms, different types of meat, different herbs that you can throw in.
Different minerals?
Yeah, different minerals, salts.
Sugar, rice, eggs.
Yeah.
All this stuff.
All sorts of ingredients. And pretty much, or most combinations of them are going to give you some unique dish. Even if you get two of the same dish, using different ingredients can affect what it does. It might, two versions of the same dish might increase a certain amount of more hearts. Or if one imparts some kind of effect, like if it's spicy, you earn temporary resistance to cold. Or if it's cold, temporary resistance to heat.
Yes.
Or resistance to...
electricity.
Electricity. Well, that comes out of elixirs mainly.
Yeah, that's true. But elixirs also come out of ingredients.
True.
So you do cook them.
Yeah, you do cook them.
Yeah.
And like extra hearts or extra stamina or things like that. Different ingredients will cause those effects to have different strength levels and different durations, which is insane.
Yeah. And it's not like a new thing in gaming, but the way they do it in this game is so satisfying and it makes so much sense.
Yeah.
Because so this pumpkin soup I made using like meat, curry spice, all this. I can't remember the exact recipe, but like all this stuff and a shell of a pumpkin. It does make my armor stronger because the pumpkin is called a fortified pumpkin because it was grown in a patch of land that's difficult to grow pumpkins in.
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, okay, that's not how real life works, but it's adjacent enough that I'm not like, but why would a pumpkin make me stronger? It's like, no, it makes sense.
It makes sense. Yeah. And I don't know about all of our dear listeners, but it really inspires me with the idea that, okay, I gotta fill a cookbook here.
Yeah.
I gotta find out all of these recipes and like what's the rarest, weirdest ingredient that I can throw in here and still get something good. Like what are the secret dishes that I can cook here? As far as my own tastes in games go, I have a knack for loving compendiums of information that you have to fill.
And this game has multiple compendiums
to fill. It has the photo album. It has the cooking. It has different outfits for you to create. And not only does it have the photo album, but every time you take a picture of something specific that the camera identifies with a name, it will give you information on that.
Yes.
So like you're not only building a photo album, it's an encyclopedia.
Yeah.
And I may sound like a nerd for saying this, but I say proudly that I love video game encyclopedias.
No, me too. I mean, it's this joy of, I don't know, if you're
collecting.
We're both very nerdy.
It's like collecting cards.
It's like hoarding information.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm also the kind of person who likes like lists and stuff in real life too, and like sorting things. So it's like it's very satisfying.
It does feel like card collecting.
Yeah.
And eventually you have this wealth of information about this world, or you have this wealth of information on how to cook exactly what you want and where to find those ingredients.
The funny thing about cooking is that for me in the game, you can make so many weird recipes that don't really matter that it motivates me on a creative level.
Yeah.
And it like gets me to go places I wouldn't even go.
Exactly.
Like I went on a whole expedition to find different kinds of fruit and cane sugar because I wanted to make a fruit cake. And like what? There's no point. Like cake doesn't really give you any benefits.
Right.
So it's like, why would you make it? Because I'm sitting there and I'm like, I want to make it because it looks good. It looks tasty, and there's a little girl in this village who likes fruitcake, so why wouldn't I?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like It's like, it's nice. It's like a really tactile, pleasing element of the game.
Yes.
That gives you motivation to go to do stuff outside of I have to do it because it's a game.
Right, right. Yeah, it inspires your own creativity within the mechanics of the game, just as the rest of the game does.
Yeah.
The rest of the game tells you there are multiple ways to oust this pack of bokoblins over here.
There's multiple ways even to defeat Ganon.
Right. But then it says, like, okay, you could go with this route, but only the cleverest of you will think of this route, and
we've written down here, exploration is not punished, but encouraged.
Yes.
Like, in other games, you might hit an invisible wall because they don't want you to go look over there.
Right.
In Breath of the Wild, they don't tell you to look over there, but if you look over there, there's going to be a lot of cool mushrooms.
Yeah.
So it's like...
And there's, like, very few... I don't think there's, at least within the giant square that is Hyrule, I don't think there's any peak that you can't climb up.
No, there's nothing, and it rewards
I think
you.
There might be one in the Gerudo Valley that's just
too cold.
Meant to be a wall because at that point you just run out of land.
Yeah.
But like within the context of this game, or within the context of this world, there's no mountain you can't climb.
And it rewards you for climbing.
Yes.
Like there's one moment, I think it's the Dueling Peaks one, where you get to the top and you're in between the two peaks and you see, like, not related to anything, a cooking pot, what looks like some sort of chair, and a rusty weapon.
Yeah.
And it's like, someone lived here.
Someone lived there.
And it's like a little spooky because I feel like you're maybe being watched by a ghost.
Yeah.
But it's also like kind of beautiful and wonderful.
Yeah.
Because it's like some other character was here once, and now I get to sit here in their chair.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
It's wordless storytelling.
Totally.
Now,
environmental storytelling.
One problem that may surface from building a game where ain't no mountain high enough is that how do you structure a narrative to this game? Like, how do you make it so that maybe the player wants to go in a particular direction besides telling them to?
Yeah.
Make it so that one area is too cold to
Yeah.
survive in. One area is just too hot or too filled with lava,
Yeah.
or just too desert. Areas are too extreme for you unless you take the time to look around, learn
Absolutely.
how to be in that environment, and then get the reward of, now I know how to survive in the desert without starving or dying of thirst.
And maybe that means making like 12 spicy grilled fish recipes.
Yeah.
And just eating them while you're walking through.
Yeah, that's the thing that other games, I'm saying, like, that's the thing that I feel like other games wouldn't do.
Yeah.
If you want to try and cheat the system and cook a bunch of crazy dishes to try and gun it through this,
go for
then
it.
go for it.
We won't
Go with
stop
your
you.
bootleg way to
We
play
won't
this
stop
game.
you, you nasty little man. Like, go for it.
Or, like, if you want to speed run the game, there are ways to do it. If you want to go running in your underwear, having not collected anything in the game but the bare minimum, you can go right to Hyrule Castle and try and storm it. It's very difficult to get very far because everything's so powerful there. Again, the whole game is just about building your strength.
Yeah.
But
you do you.
But you do you.
Yeah.
It's a creative game. You're creating the narrative here, and that's wonderful.
Yeah. I think maybe we should end by listing what our favorite dish is to make and why.
Sure.
Yeah.
Let's list our favorite dishes. Also, I just wanted to have a brief retelling of my first moment of Breath of the Wild.
Yes.
My first moment was that I woke up out of the resurrection chamber, get the whole cutscene, go outside, view this beautiful world, this flourishing music, amazing. My first time ever playing a Zelda game.
Yeah.
And the first thing I do is go walking right off the cliff by accident.
Oh no!
I fall off the cliff to my death. And then I get a little, rest in peace sign where I died, and I realized, I shouldn't have gone that way.
No.
It was telling me to go a certain way. Anyway, that was my experience. So I really started off as an underdog.
Yeah, you really did. You came back to life.
Yes.
That's another thing that I found out about the map that really spooked me at first, is whenever you die somewhere, they'll put an X and it'll say R.I.P. on the map.
Yeah.
And I was like, what does this
that mean? Yeah.
Does this mean if I go there, I'm going to perish? But no, it's just another kind of element of cataloging.
Yeah.
Well, what's your favorite dish?
Anyway, my favorite dish, I'm still considering, I'm still trying to think of mine, so why don't you go ahead first?
Mine is hearty soup.
Hearty soup.
So I don't know if this is the exact name, actually, so I'm going to go ahead and do a little search. But hearty soup is not a particularly... I'm not going to say it's not helpful, because it does give you hearts, obviously.
Yeah.
But it's sort of it's a dish that doesn't exist in the real world. Because a lot of dishes like risotto, curry, these are things you can make.
Mm-hmm.
But this one is just totally based off of... It's called creamy heart soup.
Creamy heart soup.
It's totally based off of this game.
Yeah.
And I believe you make it with hearty radish, any kind of fruit, I want to say. Milk. Oh, here it is. Milk, hydromelon, volt fruit. So yeah, fruits, hearty, radish, and milk. And it's this pink dish. And you get it in a little cute bowl.
Yeah.
Unlike a lot of other dishes, which come on just kind of like a plate.
I remember this now, yeah.
Yeah. And it's this all pink and green meal.
Yeah.
And in the middle is a radish cut into the shape of a heart.
That's so cute.
And it's curative, so it just fills heart containers and it doesn't really do anything else.
Yeah.
But it's just really sweet, and
Yeah.
I think its little caption in your cookbook says something cute, like if you give this to someone you you'll fall in love.
Aww.
And it's stuff like this where I'm wondering, is Link writing this cookbook? Because it's
you're rewarded with the presentation.
It's very sweet, and it does definitely feel like some recipe Link made up on the spot, which I really like. I think it's a little personality, and it's really cute. And I first discovered it by accident as I was throwing stuff together, And it really, truly felt like I discovered something.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I didn't know what it would make.
My favorite dish, I've decided, is a bit more rugged. It's again the result of saying we want the player to be creative, to try things, and that involves sometimes making mistakes.
Yeah.
My favorite dish is the rock hard food.
Yeah.
Just food, rock hard food. And that happens anytime that you try to put wood or any rock or mineral into the cooking pot and cook
Yeah.
something. I tried this before, thinking, what would happen if I just put wood or maybe rock, maybe like one of the diamonds in? You know, a diamond is pretty rare. Whoops.
Oops.
Maybe it creates something. No, it does not. It creates rock hard, just this like miserable little looking dish of ash called rock hard food. And it refills a quarter of a heart, which is the minimum that any food can do for you. Like, it imparts no effects. It's the bare minimum that food can do in this game. But I love it because it's still viable. It's still a
Yeah.
viable strategy.
You're not being punished.
You're not being punished. I mean, you're being punished for putting a diamond into the cooking
You're
pot.
being questioned for
yeah,
it.
yeah. But think about it this way. If all you had was a cooking pot and a forest, you could still refill some hearts if you were really resourceful about it.
Yep.
And like that's what I love about this game. It encourages you to be creative, it encourages you to be resourceful, it encourages you to fill up on information and about this place by exploring it, and it encourages you to tell the story.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's a good place to stop.
I think that feels like a great place to stop.
Yeah.
Thank you for tuning in for episode 1.
Absolutely.
Scruffy will be joining me for the rest of the semester.
Yeah. The rest of this year, so like...
Yeah, the calendar year.
The calendar
Yes.
year, yeah.
So, I believe that's 7 episodes.
Something like that.
Something around there. Yeah, so we'll be talking about different topics. If you remember the format from last year, we don't always focus on one game. Usually we talk about multiple topics. But we're bringing something in new every week. And usually we're on Fridays, 7 p.m.
Yeah.
These last 2 weeks have been a little different. Next week, I believe we're doing Saturday as well because
Saturday it's at 7 Pacific time.
Because I have the infamous CalArts Halloween party to go to.
Oh, goodness.
So we'll be switching it up a little. But other than that, it's the same time as it always is. And thank you for tuning in.
Yeah. Thanks a lot.
Yeah.
All right.
We'll play you out with a little Tarrytown.
Let's. I need to get back to Tarrytown,
Yeah.
actually. Tarrytown. Just a beautiful, very tranquil theme.